One of the things I'd like to talk about today, which I think is very important and follows on to what Congressman Rossman was talking about, is what we expect of our society as it relates to who we are as individuals and our relationship with our government. One of the things that struck me as we were going through this whole healthcare debate was that a lot of people were saying things along the lines, oh look, we've got an economy that's in real crisis. Why are we focusing on healthcare issues at the exclusion of jobs, and businesses, and taxes? We took our eye off the ball. What I'd like to talk to you about today is why I think they kept their eye exactly on the ball. That healthcare, what happened with it, what we've done with it over the past 2 years, is actually central to this fundamental transformation of American society. You know, I come from a fairly long line of physicians. My grandfather practiced medicine in Michigan, graduated University of Michigan in the 1920s. And if you think about what it was like back then to practice medicine, they literally used to have to dip their finger in people's urine and taste it to see if they had diabetes. And diabetes was a fatal illness. My grandfather passed away when I was 12 as an elderly man. And at his funeral, they brought up that one of the things he had been famous for in Illinois was that he was the first doctor, Michigan, was that he was the first doctor in Michigan to use insulin to save the lives of diabetics, which was a miracle. For thousands of years, if you had diabetes, you died. Children. They had no antibiotics. There was really no such thing as open heart surgery. Anesthesia was in its infancy. In the space of really just 2 generations, we've come to where we are now, which, as Congressman Rossman said, we have a healthcare system now that a lot of us take for granted. But my parents are in their 70s. My dad runs 5 miles every other day. My parents still have an active legal practice that they own. We can't get them to babysit at all because they're so active. And my grandmother recently, passed away about a year ago. She was in her 90s. And it was kind of a sudden and shocking thing that she passed away the way she did because she was still extremely active and healthy. And this is the outcome of American medicine. Medicine hasn't always been the way it is in our society. One of the things we do take for granted is our relationship with our physicians. And that's really what I'm going to talk to you about today, is what that relationship is rapidly becoming, or in fact, my belief has become de facto different than it used to be. The strain of the relationship, the story of this relationship between the doctor and the patient goes back thousands of years. What we see it as in this country, the relationship between you, behind closed doors, with your sometimes dearest secrets about your own care, your own worries, your family, your children, your parents, behind closed doors, with a professional who's dedicated to your care, that has always been around for thousands of years. We know about the Hippocratic Oath, there's the Oath of Maimonides. These things are codified in medical ethics for thousands of years. But let me tell you that that's been an ongoing battle. In many societies, including ours, over periods of time, that hasn't always been the story. We all know the stories that are different, right? We know of Nazi Germany, where physicians were agents of the state. Who goes which direction? We know about the Soviet Union and China, where psychiatrists would diagnose sluggishly progressive schizophrenia in people who had odd beliefs, like Freidman. Many people don't know that in this country we have a pretty sordid history of physicians being co-opted by state interests or by political ideals that are not related to the care of their individual patient. There's a book called Against the Weak, which is about eugenics in this country. If you look at what happened in Germany about their ideas of eugenics, they were founded here in the United States. Racial hygiene, getting rid of defective people, whether they be mentally defective or physically defective, long-standing war against people with epilepsy in this country and in others. So the relationship between the individual patient, the responsibility that we have as physicians to our individual patient that's kind of codified in these oaths that we take, is something that's really critical to what we've done in this country with health. But it's changing. And I want to draw you a picture of how serious things have gotten from just a few years ago to where we are now. I think I gave you my letter.
You did it.
You all heard the phrase accountable care organizations? Yeah. You know, one of the things that's really been striking to me throughout this debate is how predictive Orwell was in his book 1984 about this idea of newspeak. How you can use words that sound good, sound nice, but really mean something very different than what they've been assigned. I mean, frankly, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is the worst example as far as I'm concerned. What we already have in place with this law, and mind you, it's not just the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, it's the Healthcare Reconciliation and Education Act, which is the reconciliation bill that was passed a few days after Obamacare, or the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was passed. It also goes to the stimulus. What we have now is a legal structure of pieces in place, here, there, connected in all sorts of ways, that now create a medical profession, me included, your doctor included, that no longer works for you, that no longer has an ethical responsibility to you. You know, I've got some, I don't use a teleprompter, I use notes. I got that from you, by the way. I used to be able to do this stuff without reading from stuff, but honestly, Obamacare is like a computer virus. It just keeps multiplying. And I've had a difficult time keeping it all in my head at once. But I got my letter just the other day from Advocate. Advocate's up here, it's everywhere. It's the largest hospital system in northern Illinois. And they're inviting me to join Advocate Care. Welcome to my third newsletter. This is from Ellen Brule, who's the medical director. I'm gonna, you know, I own my own practice. I'm a simple country pediatrician. There's 3 of us. We built this practice from scratch. Only ever wanted to hang out my own shingle, take care of the kids, and just be a physician with a black bag like my grandfather was. Her last paragraph says, I believe small independent practices can only continue to remain that way, small and independent, with the assistance of advocate physician partners. As we begin the journey of establishing our medical homes and accountable care organization, you know, one goal of this new model is for everyone to consistently work to the full extent of their license. Gee, I thought I was already working pretty hard. In other words, physicians should not be doing the work that can be accomplished by other staff members. And I've heard physicians in this model state they are happier because they are truly doing what they were meant to be doing. What this amounts to, what these accountable care organizations, which are a critical component and are now in law of what healthcare is going to become, are HMOs. Government-regulated HMOs, government-designed HMOs, government-controlled HMOs. Take a little side path here. You know, we talk about the socialization of medicine. We talk about how we don't want to see what's happening in places like Europe, the UK, other places that have socialized, Canada. We don't want that in this country. Well, I can tell you we're probably not going to get it. At least not that we can see it on the face of it. You know, the government's learned its lessons. The American people are smart enough, and the American people are principled enough not to want those things. So what do? They just co-opt the normal structures that we all live with. Everybody remembers you can keep your doctor if you want to keep your doctor. Well, if he has retired or left, 46% of doctors say they're going to leave the practice of medicine if this all comes to fruition. What if he doesn't work for you anymore? What if he's in his office and he's been contacted by his new accountable care organization, he's going to be accountable. All the insurance companies that any of you are on have signed up with the accountable care organization such that the payments to that doctor go through this structure. The structure lives with guidelines set up by the U.S. Preventative Task Force. Does everybody remember the mammogram rule? Anybody 43 and thinking they might get a mammogram? Well, maybe not. You know, it's not cost effective according to the federal government. By the way, did you all know that on the panel that made that decision, the U.S. Preventative Task Force on Preventive Services, there weren't any oncologists on that task force?